Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. We had the Kentucky Derby on Saturday, and I bet King Russell because of Russ, and he ended up, what was it, 15th, Russ?
out of 15 horses.
I think so.
Yeah. I think the field was down to,
But I did.
Not a good showing for my name.
Kev, I'm not a scientific bettor. I bet the Kentucky Derby every year, and I just go in and say, okay, I like that name, and I'll bet it. And the horse that I bet was called Two Phils, and the Phil was because of Phil Collins, who's one of my favorite musicians and my favorite drummer. And I bet it to win, like I always bet it to win. And then I found out it was leading down the stretch, and a horse called Maze beat it and if it would have won, I probably would have won for my bet probably about $120, but of course I won nothing.
Yeah. Eddie Olczyk took that Two Phils as his.
Oh,
I think, I don't know if it was, what did it go off at? It might have been his long shot.
Yeah, well, no, it was after Vinny Viola's horse was scratched. It was it was like a medium favorite, like 8-1, 9-1, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw that Eddie had something about Two Phils. So
yeah. So I wish I would have. Well, I did listen to it. I didn't take it. It was just the pick of the name, and I didn't know that he picked it. But thanks, Eddie. But you didn't win. So
no.
Russ, go ahead.
So let's talk about the NFL and the shortage of quarterbacks. Which, by the way, I think the NHL is going to start having that with goalies. But that's a discussion for another day. But right now, as far as shortage of quarterbacks, it's gotten to the point now where some NFL teams were looking into seeing if they could pry Andrew Luck out of retirement to play. And of course, the Colts got word of this, and the Colts still own his rights. And they basically said they'll defend that. And so my basic question is this: how many years are they going to let the Colts own his rights? Like, in other words, if Luck really left because he didn't want to be there anymore, because he didn't like the fans, he didn't like what, there should be a time limit that says 3 years, 4 years, where after that he can come back. But it seems like it's in perpetuity, and that makes his retirement, unless he really just wanted to leave the game and hated football, even worse, because he's not going to be able to come back with anybody.
Well, they'd have to trade for his rights, Cal.
Yeah.
It
sounds like the Colts are going to be really jerky about that and will hold you up. And I don't know.
But I mean, what could they possibly, ask? It'll be a late round,
right.
pick. So, that's all right. That's fine if they have to give that up to get them. But, that's interesting. I hadn't heard about the shortage of quarterbacks, but, it makes sense. This is a story
the Commanders were looking. They were the first team looking into Andrew Luck. So
I'll tell you a story, and this is years ago, because John L. Smith was the Michigan State coach, and that was 3 coaches ago. So probably it was 10, 12 years ago. But anyway, I had this conversation with the Michigan State football coach, and he had been, an assistant coach for years, and he had watched the thing. And he predicted that, how difficult it is to find quarterbacks, even at the college level, because the position has become so incredibly sophisticated. And, he was just telling me, like in the old days, you'd call 2 plays and the guy would run it in, and then the quarterback had to run 1 or 2 plays. Now you send in a sequence of plays that gives the quarterback some options on what to do.
That's a massive playbook. No, I get that.
Yeah, and then he walks up to the line and he looks at the defense, and he then immediately changes the play right there. And then as the defense moves around, he checks off again. Then he snaps the ball, and he's got 5 reads. So he said quarterbacks today have to be so incredibly smart with incredible memories. And then on top of that, we haven't even talked about the athleticism. And he said they were heading in college for more athletic running quarterbacks, which we see in the NFL now as well. So, imagine, you're looking for guys now that have superhuman athletic ability. They've got to be so incredibly smart to handle the sophistication of the offense, and to be able to read and have great instincts. Like, no wonder they can't find enough guys that sort of fit what they're looking for.
Yeah, the 2 things I would counter that with, definitely this is why the older quarterbacks have been able to hang around, because they get the plays, they know the offenses, they know the playbooks. But this league is a complete West Coast offense league, and I just keep saying that if I had a team, I would go in there with an option quarterback and a guy who is a real threat to run and a real threat to pass and a tremendous running game, and that's how I would do it. And I would be the opposite of everybody else, because everybody is so used to the West Coast. If you start playing it simple in the NFL and you got a guy that can do 15-yard passes and once in a while you do a hook and ladder and simple things like that, I think it could work, because I think sometimes these teams overthink it.
Well, I don't know. That seems like Tom Brady, to me. He's always throwing underneath, So I think they're doing that now. So.
Not enough to it.
San Francisco did that and did it effectively when they had Kaepernick, because Kaepernick was not a non-traditional quarterback. I mean, he could throw the long ball, but not extremely accurately, but he could run and he could throw.
You get that guy when he's young, right? When he could take a little bit of a beating, and you say, all right, look, we're going to be such a threat to run that at some point the pass is going to offset the run. And I'm telling you, it can be done in this league. It's just no one wants to do it.
But the thing is, Kev, I think the reality here in the NFL, and it may be slowly coming towards this, is that, we've seen the sort of evolution of the running back to now the point where the running back is, okay.
A blocker.
or a blocker, or somebody that you run into the ground like Derrick Henry, and then 3-4 years down the road you just dispose of them. And I mean, quarterbacks, if they go that I mean, they're paying quarterbacks $50 million a year.
Yeah.
At a certain point, go ahead.
So, Kev, let's talk about DeAndre Swift for a minute, because everybody in the Eagles felt like their team hit a home run when they traded for him from the Lions. But I remember the Lions were pretty disappointed with his output. What is your take on him?
Well, if you look at his numbers, they're actually quite good. The problem the Lions had is that he was constantly hurt. But my argument is running backs are always constantly hurt, and it's just the nature of the position. I was one of those ones. I thought the Lions did a lot of good things on trade deadline, but I don't know why they got rid of Swift, because he was a very productive.
There was something else going on, like they were just angry with him getting hurt, and they just said,
"No." I mean, they had drafted a guy, they signed Montgomery. They've got another free agent they're bringing in, and I think, they want to run the football, and he's dynamic. But, is he a durable run 20 times a game running back? I'm not sure that he is. So
I think
that's what the Eagles were hoping that he is.
I don't think there are many running backs like that anymore.
You're right.
They're all gadget guys. I mean,
yeah, but he's very dynamic. So, you're in a hole and suddenly you get the ball to him on a little flare pass, and suddenly, you go 60 yards. Like he's and all he needs is a little seam and he's gone. So,
right.
He's, but I don't know. They didn't get much for him, in my opinion.
7th rounder or something, or
2 picks. They got a 4th and
7th. Yeah.
All right, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, May 8th, 2023.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology, and can't we just do the lottery now and get it over with?
I'm Kevin Allen, and I'd be for that, because I got to write it tonight. So I got to write it at 8:31. So,
and I'm Michael Agello, and the winner is, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Yeah, I'd sign up for the lottery. Making it a TV event and waiting until 8:00. It's ridiculous. But
it's worse than that, because Kevin's probably gotten a text than I did. If the team you're covering wins the lottery, then they're going to have a press conference sometime between 8 and 9, and then you got to wait for that. And I'm supposed to do 2 shows tonight. That would really complicate.
Yeah, my team's not going to win the lottery, so I got a 5% chance. Plus, no team has lost as many spots in the draft since 2016 as the Ravens have. They've lost 8.
That doesn't mean this won't be the time, though.
No, I mean it's always possible, but I don't know. Just doesn't feel like that's a 5% chance. There's a 64.5% chance that they'll stay right where they are. That's almost 2/3.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you that now. We're letting the cat out of the bag for all of our readers, but I'm saying I'm writing 8:31, but I'm not. I'll have 2 stories ready to go. So you can just plug it in. I mean, everybody does that. I mean,
no. I mean,
it goes. So
Yeah, no, I'll have it. I'll have it ready to and press publish. And the team one team that I'm covering is already picking 28th, so they're not in the lottery. The other one has a 2% chance, and even if they win the lottery, they'll only move up from 13th to 3rd, so they're not going to get Connor Bedard. So the drama is gone. But anyway, we'll talk about that at the end of the show because we'll probably run the Tankathon again. Let's start in the East and work our way west. Start with Carolina and New Jersey, and as with the series against the Rangers, Russ, the Devils got off the mat after, I think pretty much being dominated in the first 2 games, win 8-4 over Carolina in game 3, and playoff Freddie reared his ugly
up, man. Yeah, his glove hand was weak, and they sensed that early and exploited it. They certainly have more energy at home, and this is where sometimes we can argue, especially for a young team, Kev. We never take that into account. Home ice does seem to help the Devils with that. And the other thing was, adding Luke Hughes was fine because of the way they did it. I don't think you're seeing the full Luke Hughes here. I do think because he's a defenseman, they're kind of holding him back a little bit, but
spoon feeding him. Yeah.
But what he did do was good offensively. He gave them more offensive push and kept the puck in their zone, and those things are important.
Yeah, I mean, they did what you and I talked about that they were going to do. It's much harder for a defenseman when you're young. He's still a teenager.
Yep.
Trying to sort it out, trying to cover, high yield offensive players, and Lindy Ruff was really excited about his level of play. I mean, he said, I was hoping he might be pretty good, and he was great. He really thought he gave him a spark, and certainly, the history of numbers suggests that was the case. I mean, they're only the 6th brother tandem to, get 6 or more points in a playoff game, and you don't get a lot of teenagers that play their first game on defense and get multiple points. I mean, the list is kind of a nice who's who. There's a couple kind of shockers in there, but Erik Karlsson was one of them, and all that kind of stuff. So, I thought, it was almost like they were trying to do what you do when you change goalies, and they did that too. Mm-hmm. Which, you just try to give your team a spark. It's not like nothing wrong, but you thought, well, Hughes has got a motor. Maybe that motor will get going, and we'll get excited and that sort of thing. And that's what happened.
It's exciting when when somebody's rooting for a team and they show up for a game 3.
Yeah, no, it was. I was a little surprised, to be honest with you, that they switched goalies, but it worked out. They got a lot of goals. I mean, to me, one of the stories of the playoffs has been their inability to score goals. Even with an 8-goal outburst, I looked it up this morning because I ended up writing about this. Mm-hmm. It got them all the way up. They got them all the way up to 2.7 goals per game in the postseason. This is for a very exciting offensive team that all season. So, and the other thing about that game, which was really curious, was 3 shorthanded goals by Carolina. We obviously haven't seen that before. So, that was kind of unique in that regard as well. But that was not Carolina's finest effort.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a lot of not that New Jersey is going to be like a powerhouse like Edmonton was in the 80s, but if you remember the playoff series that the Oilers had before they won everything, they had these really wildly inconsistent playoff series where they would have a game where they just looked like that yesterday, like the Devils looked, and then they would lose 2 games where they didn't even show up. It's to me, it's just a youthful thing. Like it's like a young team, but they're going to be really good. Like that's what it feels. That's what it feels like with the Devils. Are they
on the right path? Obviously,
they're on the right path. Are they there yet? No. Every once in a while, they'll play a couple of little terrible games, but then every once in a while, you'll see like, whoa, hold on, this team can really do stuff too. You just don't know what team you're getting. They're not fully formed yet, but they're going to be good, and that's what it feels like. And then but
that's a good phrasing for it too. They're not fully formed. Yeah, that's right.
Well, I know of a team that is fully formed, but in a negative sense. and we'll talk about them in a minute. I do what I'm interested in here is the way Carolina reacts to this. Do they go back to Freddie? Do they go to Auntie Ranta? I mean, I was surprised that Kochetkov was the backup when Ranta didn't get hurt. Ranta was their goalie throughout the first round. So, I mean, I'm just wondering whether they stick with Anderson or they go back to Ranta.
I think they're going to Ranta. I think they put in Kochetkov because he just wanted to see what he had and maybe give him some reps in case things went really bad in this series. But I think now they're going to go to Ranta. I just feel like Anderson wasn't prepared. And they might lose the next game, but they can't lose it that way again because then they would be in trouble for that series. So I think if nothing else, if you put in Ranta, it won't be anything like that game.
Ranta was sick. Someone saying in the chat room. That's what I heard too.
Okay. I didn't.
That was the issue. You know,
so then they'll go back to him if he's 100%. And Kev, it wasn't just 3 shorthanded goals for Carolina; it was 4 shorthanded goals. Period. I mean, New Jersey scored a short.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, no, it was a nutty game, you know. And I just thought Carolina, you know, despite their goaltending deficiencies in that game, it went beyond that. Like they just didn't even look right.
No.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Ugly game at times too. I texted you guys. It was just like
they weren't doing much offensively at all.
Go ahead.
No, I texted you guys once watching one of these games. These 2 teams play earlier in the series. There's not a whole lot of flow in this series in this game. You know, I mean, in this there was more. Obviously, you had all the goals, but they played an ugly game too. Like the Carolina Hurricanes and the Devils. There's not a whole lot. It's weird. I mean, they really. There was a lot of there were some ugly moments in yesterday's Leafs Panthers game too, but we'll get to that too. But so yesterday, so it's funny. A little quick story about that before we go there. We'll go there now. But so I'm sitting. I'm one of my niece who is a huge fan of the show. Congratulations, graduated. And I was there yesterday, and she's a huge fan of Mike. Like she thinks she thinks Mike like she loves the show. She's like I can't wait. Like me and my friends are tuning in because we just can't wait to see what Mike's going to say next.
He has excellent taste.
And, yes, exactly. And she's like it's very entertaining. It's crazy, but it was funny to hear her whole group of her friends like college age, and her just like sitting there saying, yeah, Mike's nuts, but they think you're a great entertainment, Mike. So everyone wants to know what you have to say, Mike. We all want to know what you have to say after yesterday's down 3-0 in the series loss.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, I talked to Russ about this earlier. I wrote about this, and I encourage people to read my piece on Hockey Buzz.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not any great shock because yesterday it wasn't the goaltending. Samsonov got injured early in the game, and Joseph Wall came in cold, and I thought played really well for his, in his first real long look as a playoff goaltender. It wasn't on the defense, although I pointed out, I showed this video, posted it on Twitter, got a lot of responses where Justin Hall, my favorite defenseman, was wildly out of position on Anthony Duclair's breakaway goal that made it 1-1. And Sheldon Keefe's disbursement of time on ice with guys like TJ Brody playing almost 27 minutes when other guys like Giordano are playing 8 is questionable. But it's come down to the fact that your core group, the $40 million 4 guys, have now not scored in 5 games. The team is averaging 2 goals a game, which leaves you no room for any kind of, if you make one mistake, it's, you're not going to win many games when you score 2 goals. You need to score 3 or 4, especially with their propensity for giveaways. And yesterday, in a game where this team, Kev, you would think would be desperate, would be on, like do or die. They score a goal early. Matthews hits the post or the crossbar, and then they don't get a shot for 25 minutes. And they were really lucky. They were really fortunate to get to overtime, and Reinhart scores the wraparound goal. The effort of that core group is definitely being called into question now, and not by just me, because I've been a one-note Charlie on that for 4 years. It's now everyone. Everyone sees Matthews, Marner, Tavares, and Nylander not scoring, and they're saying, what the hell's going on?
Well, the only thing I would say about that, and these are always hard, but I don't think you're giving Florida enough credit. Like, I thought Florida played a really strong game, and they are just so confident right now. And I thought the goaltending did impact Toronto this way. Like, even though he was good, but the Maple Leafs didn't trust him. I thought that their entire approach changed after they switched goalies. Yeah. Like, they didn't have that push. They were afraid to get up there. They were always sort of, had one skate headed back in the other direction. I thought it kind of changed them just because they felt like they had to help him more because, he was young and did that. But I thought yesterday's game of the three, I thought yesterday's game was more Florida than it was more what Florida was doing. Like, they were so aggressive in that game. Like, they were on top of everything. They were just pushing all the time.
Right. They're playing with house money, Kev. I mean,
they are. But I mean,
it's more than that. It's more than that.
Yeah. But I mean, you got to give them credit for.
Oh no, I don't.
They played so well.
I don't want what I'm saying to take away credit. I'm envious of what the Panthers are doing because Tkachuk got a motor that doesn't quit. Reinhart and Bennett and Duclair, they're really playing well. What my issue is here is, I don't think their defense is particularly strong, and the Leafs are not taking advantage of that. And Bobrovsky is playing fantastic. And, the value of a goaltender, I mean, like I said, I can only look at Bobrovsky with envy when it comes to Toronto because over this 7-year span that they've made the playoffs, they've never gotten goaltending like Bobrovsky out of Freddie Anderson or Jack Campbell or Samsonov. Never once. And it would be nice to see that because I'd like to see what the Leafs would do with a goaltender who stands on his head.
And that's where my issue is. I understand the core, and I do think they'll break him up. But Dubas took a gigantic dice roll on this goaltending this year. Ek and I have ripped it apart many, many times over during the year. Samsonov's the 10th best goalie in the playoffs right now. And I'm not counting Alex Lyon. I took him out of it, and I took somebody else out of it. And save percentage-wise, he's 10th best. It's just not good enough. I get that you have to score goals, but I also get that the goaltender has to rise to the occasion too. He has never done that. And now I'm talking beyond these playoffs. Next year, yes, Joseph Woll can be your 1B, but you probably can't play him more than 30 games. No. And now you have to decide whether you're keeping Samsonov or you're going to go out there and look again, which again, the goalie market isn't good.
That's
and
bad.
my feeling is Dubas has messed this up for this is like the third year he has messed this up for goaltending. But this year was, even though they went around, was actually the worst because they thought they'd get something out of Matt Murray, and we all know they really didn't.
Well, this is okay. We're doing a post-mortem when they're still on life support, but they have no chance of winning the series. It's over with. It's just a question of whether it's going to be in 4 or 5. I'm confident of that, but they have to say the things that they have to say because it's one game at a time. Baloney. It's over with. If you didn't show up in game 3, I seriously doubt if you're going to show up in game 4 or game 5. But we'll see. But what I said today in my piece is that I get the impression, Ek, that when I said this, when we were looking at Florida-Toronto, if Toronto goes into this saying, okay, we accomplished what we wanted to accomplish, we broke the 19-year playoff drought, and we beat Tampa. That was their Stanley Cup. If they were going to go in there with that mentality, then they were toast. And that's why I picked Florida. And I can only look at the way that they've played because I think they're a more talented team than Florida. But Florida is outworking them. They're working their ass off. And that's the thing. Toronto is not working for it. And their secondary players, their support players are playing well. Morgan Riley is playing really well. It's the guys who you expect to score the goals. And when they
put up the sign, though, Mike, people want to know if you're putting up the sign or not.
Not yet, because but
for them you won't.
No, I don't want Mike to put up the sign because it's not over. And I listen. This is the thing about this.
Also, the it's. How about that?
Every series. Yeah. Listen, the Maple Leafs have come out in these games, early in these games. looking like they got it all together for like the first couple minutes of the
Yeah,
game.
but then they get punched in the
And
mouth.
it's crazy how quickly that goes away. But like their confidence is so.
Well, it's not confidence, Zach. It's not. Now I'll give you the moment yesterday. Early in the game, their mechanism to defeat Florida's forecheck was stretch passes, and they had a 2-on-1 where Matthews hit the post, and then Lafferty scored the goal, and they kept doing it, and then Florida adjusted and shut it off, and they kept doing it even though it wasn't working, and that's why they had one shot in 25 minutes. Their tactics. Their tactics early on were effective, but then Maurice changed and they were slow to respond.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, but Florida's tactics have been impressive too. Like yesterday, when I thought they played their best game, the one thing that I noted is, it's pretty clear they're playing because I think they felt like they were at a real disadvantage against that offense.
Yeah.
So it's pretty clear their puck goes in, puck's going out of our zone.
Right.
Like they're playing such a quick turnaround game, especially yesterday. I thought like every time the puck went in their zone, the defender moved it out in a hurry. I mean, it was just that quick. Their transition was so quick, and it was back going the other way. And I thought, despite the fact you were saying you didn't like Florida's defense, well, I think they've played pretty well in this series. The defense has for Florida.
Yeah. Well, they don't have to defend if they get the puck out of the zone quickly.
That's part of defending.
That's a
part
big
of defending is the ability to move the puck out of the zone.
And Toronto's escape out of their zone, it's always haphazard. It's always pulling teeth. You can't. There were minutes on end where Florida was keeping the puck in and making them work and wearing them down, and eventually, that's how they. They got the tying goal from Verhaeghe. It was off of his pants, and and then in overtime, Reinhart just weaved his way through the. I look at this, and this is just. For Toronto, a team that has waited this long to finally get through to the next level, the motor and the energy is just not there, and I don't think it's injury. There are some players I'm sure that are banged up, but again. You keep repeating the same thing over and over with the same group, and you expect to get a different result.
Well, the only thing is, Mike, when you have a top line like the Leafs have, and we're in a real defensive era, even though once in a while these defenses break down and you got to hide up next. It isn't impossible to slow these good lines down. We saw it happen with the Rangers. Maybe it didn't happen last round with Tampa because Tampa really didn't have anybody on defense other than Hedman and the young player, but they didn't have much. And now you're looking at Florida where it's like, all right, they don't have much, but they have a little bit more, and any kind of Ekblad is a big difference maker, and so they've slowed him down. Like Marner didn't have any points last game. He was a lot better in the Tampa series. So you have to break up the line. Like you just have to do it. And will Sheldon Keefe do that next game? Will he break up the line and, maybe even do something even more drastic than break up the line? Again, you have nothing to lose at this point. But the thing is, the lines failed, and you can't let one line sink your whole team. But
my take really hasn't changed on this. I think Toronto is the more skilled team.
Yeah.
But in this series, in these 3 games, this has been more about how good Florida's been than it's been about how bad Toronto has been. Change
the matchups, though, don't you think, Kev?
Yeah. I'm not saying that you're not right on everything you're saying. You got to rise up. You got to play at a high level. But I think Florida has played so well, particularly Game 3. I was really impressed with all aspects of their game was going. They were playing physical. They were getting the puck out of their zone, and they were getting it out in a hurry. And then once they got in the zone, as you pointed out, they controlled the puck in the zone. They put a lot of pressure on there, and it's almost like they wore them out. And I think the confidence of Toronto did wane a little bit because of how well Florida was executing. It's hard to play when you're a skilled team and you get that puck in their zone and suddenly it's out again, and then you got to work to get it back in again.
Well, when I looked after the game, and then we'll get off of this because
that's a couple things too.
Yeah,
about this game.
And David Kampf and Sam Lafferty are your two most effective forwards, and they were in that game. Then you're in trouble. And that's not taking anything away from them, but those are two fourth line guys, and they were the best two forwards on the ice. They were better than any of the, better than O'Reilly, better than Matthews or Marner. That spells trouble.
But I mean, that happens in playoff games because they're putting all their attention. They're not worried about Lafferty. They're not thinking about him. So he can play his game and be very effective. But they're all over Marner. They're all over Matthews.
They're getting it. You really are seeing, like, to me, one of the clearest evidence of the confidence a team that's winning gets, throughout the lineup. Like, what happened? It just goes through. Basically, it's not just the top line for Florida that's playing better all the time. Like, Barkov was way better yesterday than he was in any other game in the playoffs. He was a different player yesterday, but not just him. It's like Lesterainen, and
he's
Lundell and Zach Dup. These guys are skating they're skating taller, they're skating bigger. They're making these plays that you see why they got into the NHL.
Well, particularly the one who's been most neutralized in this series has been Marner, and I wouldn't eliminate the fact that his line mate in junior was Matthew Tkachuk. So if there's anybody who has an insight of how to shut down,
that to me is the point, Mike. Like, he should not be afraid of playing Tkachuk.
and he's a lot of people, and I didn't think so, but a lot of people think he has played afraid in these 3 games. I
should be. And the reality is,
I don't think he's played afraid. He just hasn't been as assertive.
He's just not confident. Like, the reality is, like, I think Toronto believed what you were saying, what everybody else was saying, that they shouldn't have beaten Tampa or whatever, that they didn't play well enough to beat Tampa, and yet they somehow snuck by. And so they didn't get the confidence that they should have gotten from that first round victory. They're playing as if this is another first round.
Players don't think like that.
No, I don't think so.
They're playing. They're not playing like they won a round of hockey. Like, they're playing.
No, that I agree with, but they don't look at it like, oh, we got lucky to get by Tampa. Now we're going to just.
I know that, but deep down, there's the confidence of how good you really are. Is the Panthers believe what they're doing, completely, 100%. And they've won 6 games in a row now. I mean, against teams that have 120 points.
The Panthers are infused with confidence because they beat the best team in the league, regular season-wise, and now they're being the team that everybody thought could come out of the East. With the teams that were remaining, and they're playing with confidence. They got great goaltending.
That just goes against what you're talking about, though, Mike. I mean, I guess the point would be there's nobody in these playoffs that Florida wouldn't be beating with how well they're playing in this.
Yeah, I agree with that right now.
I mean, they're just playing at a high level. Now, all your points probably are accurate in terms of, they got to step up. They didn't step up. But a lot of this is how well the Florida Panthers are playing with how much confidence.
The only thing I say about the Leafs is, and I'll say it again, and they got close with O'Reilly, they still don't have anybody that really fires them up. Like, you don't want to keep using like the Mark Messier example, but he did have a way of firing up players before they got out on the ice. If the coach isn't going to do it, like Keep isn't, they really need to find a player to be a catalyst like that. I mean,
even if you have a great coach, you need that player. Even if you have a great coach, Russ, you need a player to do it because
they don't have it.
Right. No, I mean, John Tavares is very close to being a Matt Sundin type of captain where he leads by example and not by motivation. And O'Reilly has been that guy since they got him. But we'll talk about this after. We'll talk about this after they get eliminated. But this will be. I am. I've said it for 3 years that they needed to shake up the core. I think this is the final straw.
Yeah, just to force them into it, but this is also just going to raise more questions.
Yeah,
that's all it's going to do.
Yeah, but it depends on how Florida does moving forward too. Like as Kevin's saying, like if Florida rolls through the next round or whatever, then you are starting to think about Florida just being like a team that's just.
They could be, but it could be a matchup of styles too.
Or the next, every round is different. So and you got
that's
this.
Why I hate picking them all ahead of time.
Good. And the other issue is, there's only one Matthew Tkachuk, and there aren't as many of those fiery captains as you would think.
Right.
So I mean, most of them really are, class. Not that Matthew isn't class, but I mean, they're known for, being a little less aggressive than Kachuk is. Like I said, I really believe Kachuk just went in there and said, this is the way I play. Come with me, or we don't need you.
Well, I know for a fact that that's what they wanted him to do. They said we wanted.
Well, that's what he did.
Yeah.
And
they wanted to get like street cred because by having Kachuk on in their locker room in their team.
Well, I see Brent Burns doing it with Carolina in games.
Yeah.
He's challenging the other team. Like he's on defense. He's challenging the other team in their zone to get by him. And at times he has beaten them by diving and making stops. Yeah. Like nobody on the Leafs is doing that.
No.
Well, it's interesting because all the people we've mentioned are, Messier, the pumpkin carver, as he was called in 1990. And then we've got Burns, who plays a little physical as well. Yeah. Of course, Kachuk, 9 hits in a game the other day. So, there aren't as many of those guys around. And when you do have one, you feel, really good about it. But, like Toronto, they got to be careful because you go in and what makes Toronto is that core group of highly skilled player. And if you bring that up, and you don't somehow improve your defense or your goaltending, and I don't know how they're going to improve their goaltending.
Well, that's the whole purpose
out there. So
that's the whole purpose. Yeah, is breaking up that core means trading one of them, not trading 4 of them to the 4 corners of the world. Because you can't trade Tavares. He's got a no-move clause. You're not trading Matthews because he's one of the best players in the league. And Marner had a 100-point season. So I don't think it's, you're not going to get full value. Nylander is making $7 million and scored 40 goals. So I think if you move him, then you're going to get value back from him. And it might not be value in terms of, you might be draft picks and prospects and clearing cap space to sign other players. So, I mean, we'll see what happens.
Well, like Kev said, I mean, it's going to be tough to get goaltending. Yeah. You've got some aging defensemen. Now, Giordano's not the same this round.
No, I think he's hurt because he only played 8 minutes last week.
Yeah, I think he's hurt too.
Let's switch to Seattle-Dallas because that game last night wow. I mean,
what a bizarre day of games yesterday in general.
Yeah.
Like all the games were crazy. Like
I was thankful I could go to sleep early. Like, thank you, Seattle.
Yeah, same here. I was because I was beat up. I was tired too. I was going through the same thing. So I spent hours. My graduation I went to was down like by the shore, and it was a horrible day to drive to the shore because there was just so many people on the road. So it took me like 3 hours to go there, 3 hours to get back. By the time I was watching the late game, I was shot to hell.
But it was easy to turn that game off after the second period.
It was. I don't know what to make of that series. I really don't either. We're gonna have to see game 4. I don't understand it.
No 2 games have been anything alike.
No.
The funny thing
have been totally different.
Is that game? Jake Ottinger must be allergic to odd numbers because game 1 he was horrible, and game 3 he wasn't particularly strong, and they pulled him. Now he can bounce back, and I think he's one of the better young goaltenders in the league.
But Dallas's defense starting to sag a little bit. It's not the greatest defense.
Well, Heiskanen went out after taking that hurt.
That hurt.
That hurts a ton, and because they have older guys. Beyond that, they get old. They get old pretty fast on defense.
They do.
And you're playing against a team that is just nothing but fast in Seattle. So you have to keep up. The older players in Dallas keeping up with them.
I want to give Seattle credit, but when I watch them, I'm going, really? I mean, not that they're bad players, but I don't get it. Their goaltending.
It's all kind of mediocre. It feels like.
Yeah.
For a team that's in the final 8 and like there's 2 games away from a final 4, it's a very bizarre team. It doesn't feel like they would have a prayer against Edmonton or Vegas. Like it's like, but it doesn't feel like they'd have a prayer against Dallas really. So I don't know.
Let's compare it to the run that Vegas went, where when you watch Vegas, you knew why they were succeeding.
Yeah,
right. Everybody was on the same page. Everybody was on the oars. Everybody had a direction.
It was Superman.
Everybody was going hard. It was a team-oriented game. You watch Seattle, and you're going, "Well, why is it they're winning here?" I'm just. They haven't figured it out yet. Maybe we will as we move on. I mean, if they keep winning, obviously they're doing something right. So
well, they're hard for us to define because we don't like teams that have 15 different guys scoring goals. Like as from a journalistic point of view, it's a tough thing to put your finger on. Like everybody is scoring.
yeah, and part of that is why they are successful because it's kind of a team concept. But like I don't feel their defense is airtight. I don't feel they're nasty and hard to play against. I don't feel their goaltending is exceptional. I like a lot of their forwards.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Wenberg was always good, never great, but he had a great game yesterday. Tolvanen was a gift, and it's worked out. But you're right. There's no, other than Matty Beniers, there's no star players, but there's a lot of good players, and then there's ones that are definitely playing over their heads. And
what they do is they play very well together as 5 people units. They do that, even though it's not like not like Russia. But another thing they do really well, honestly, is when they get leads, they have been able to shut people down. Like that's like yesterday they did it again. Like that, and that is something that we've seen all these comebacks, but none of them have been against Seattle.
No, and that's because of the experience that they brought in the expansion draft and in free agency. They brought in guys like Yanni Gord, who's won 2 Stanley Cups. So no, it's not like
even their best scorer is McCann. Jared McCann didn't even play.
Burakovsky's out too. But it's weird. If you remember that Sabre team from 06 and 07, everybody said, well, they don't have a first line, but they have 3 second lines. I almost think that Seattle has like 3 third lines. They have like 3. They have some scoring, but they really are a two-way machine, and they're always checking and they're always physical. And that's tough to match up against because we know that Dallas has a number 1 line with Hintz and Robertson. And honestly, Robertson has been a non-factor for like the last 3 or 4 games.
It's true.
Now, this is the symbol of them. And Mike, I remember you remembered his name. Who's the kid they brought up from the American Hockey League? He was the leading rookie scorer. He was undrafted. Cartier, or what's his name?
Ty Cartier.
Cartier. He's been quoted every game since he's got called up.
Yeah.
Now, what is he being? Why is he being quoted? To me, that's sort of a symbol of what I'm talking about here. Like, this team is so.
He probably has a personality. Like,
he come up and not only get minutes, but suddenly become a team spokesman.
Yeah,
it's kind of hard to describe. I think they did benefit a little bit. This is a case, I think, of a good draw for them. Like I think they would have had trouble sustaining the momentum had they played Vegas and Edmonton.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I just think Seattle can play a little sleepy sometimes.
And look what they've got. Jay in the chat room is right about Daniel Sprung. I mean, he's got 21 goals on the barely plays.
Line.
They have a bunch of guys that scored a bunch of goals. No great scorers, but I don't want to. I feel bad because I don't want to take it away from them because I'm impressed with them. I'm just saying I can't quite figure out why Dallas has some top players.
It kind of reminds me of the Predators in some way, like Seattle does. Like that we've seen over the years, the Predators teams we've seen over the years, which have like
more like Barry Trotz Predators.
They find ways to win.
Yeah, when
they're bad, they're terrible, but when they're good, they're really good. And that's like another thing that Seattle's just really good right now. But it doesn't feel out of normal.
They're good, but they're not great.
But they could get run out of the building by Edmonton. Like it doesn't feel impossible that could happen, right? So we're sitting there and. Because when you have a bunch of people scoring like that, there's that thing that Nashville does, which they all go cold at the same time or all go hot at the same time. So
and I mean, it just feels like their goaltending, like it feels like the Oilers could run him out of the net. I mean, that's how it feels. Now, that may not be the case. The Oilers could win the next round. They could win this round, and they could shut down Connor McDavid. But it doesn't feel that way.
Remember, Seattle's last Stanley Cup was 1917, so you never know. Another one.
Talk about a drought, 106 years. So.
Hey, they can say that they've beat the Leafs years. Okay, because now
people are asking in the chat room. I hold that for a sec about Gerard Gallant because we didn't do it on this show, and Kevin's here.
Yeah, we got to talk about that.
We should mention it.
We have to talk about Edmonton, Vegas too.
Yeah. We will. But we should talk about the Gallant firing because while it's not a surprise, people kept asking me because I was on Sirius Tuesday, and the first question I was asked is, "What would you do with the Rangers?" And I said I would fire Gerard Gallant, and I don't say that often. And so people were emailing me, "Did you know ahead of time?" And it's like, no, I didn't know ahead of time. This was just my feeling, watching the team, watching the way he acted. Even last year, when they made it to the conference final, I'm going to tell you his interview sessions were weird. They were always a little loopy. He was always sort of off balance. He was not really comfortable in the market. And I don't think he ever got comfortable in the New York market. Now, again, maybe all these other teams could say the same thing with how it went with him there. And maybe he's not going to get another job because there is this defiance in him. And at the end of the season, when you have a day to think about it and you start, sort of going at the media, like, why are you asking me about my job? I should be beyond this. It's not a great look, especially when you get fired a half hour later, when you finally, or it's the next day really, but when you finally meet with the GM. So there are these things with Gallant that I just think maybe there is the right market for him, but I just never felt like New York was the right market. The team definitely excelled last year. I don't know if it was because of him, and they definitely didn't crash and burn exactly because of him. But
what people say to me, Russ, about him is this: that they say that he's a really good coach. He's solid. He does it, but he's a team coach. It's all about the team. He hates star players. In the fact that he's a team. This is a team sport. He wants good players to score.
There might be some truth to that.
But that makes
when he runs into like Vegas was the perfect situation for him because it was a bunch of no names, with a great goalie. And he could get them all to play really hard, and they all bought into a system.
But that's why the moves made by Drury were so puzzling.
Exactly,
that didn't fit the what the coach wanted.
In his interviews, and it's like when he was asked throughout the playoffs this year with New Jersey, how's it feel? You have so much more talent. He sat there and said, "Talent doesn't matter." He was saying that's what he would literally say that in his press conferences, and it was an interesting thing to hear from him.
You could be the greatest assistant manager, just say that as an example of a company, go into your boss and say, "Hey, listen, I need X, Y, and Z." And the boss just gives you Z, and the X and the Y may not be what you want, but it's like tough. That's your boss. You've got to fight. You've got to overcome that.
Yeah, being an NHL coach is not the when you have lemons make lemonade. It's like you need to have players that fit your construct or your team. Now, Larry Brooks was able to shut down the Joel Quenneville rumors pretty quickly yesterday in his column. So I was talking to Russ about where they're going to go, and it doesn't seem like they're going to go big name or. I
don't think they should go big name. I don't think there's any.
There's a name. There's a name. There's a big rumor out there. I don't know if you heard it too, Kevin, but it's everywhere that I've been going to.
What's that?
That would be Mark Messier, and it's like
no, it's not going to happen.
And it's kind of it's like it's not just from one or two people, and it's not just from one or two places.
Yeah, I mean, he's always mentioned because he's always on the list of candidates. But as this team becomes more of Drury's team and the Sather influence is gone, I don't see that happening. But the point on Gallant, what I've heard from really good sources, is that Gallant's demeanor puts him in a position where he has a very short leash.
Right.
When things go bad, no one's trying to save his job because he just alienates people within the organization. And there's just something about him, that, people don't enjoy working with him. There's just, it's just something like that. Yeah. That's why he doesn't last. He hasn't lasted anywhere he's been. He's had 4 jobs and never got out beyond 3 years.
Yeah. I can tell you what Drury wouldn't bring in Messier too. If he brings in Messier, he's lost the franchise. Like, it's Messier's franchise, and I don't see he's smart enough not to do that.
Yeah. But plus, we don't know.
There's forces. There's a lot of forces.
We don't know, Kev. And honestly, he's never put the work in to show us that he could coach at any level either.
I know.
Yeah, and the coaching profession, and I always tell people this, and I know you guys know this, but we should put it out there. It's not like it was before. I mean, Larry Robinson used to want to put 2 hours a day into coaching,
Right.
and he did it. That was the old school way. You came in,
Right.
you did practice, you got out of there. Coaches today come in at 6 a.m. and they're there into all hours of the night.
Right.
They're breaking down every player's every play.
Yeah.
And, so that when they come in the next day, they can show them, these are the 16 plays you made in the game. And, you were good on 8 of them and terrible on 8 of them. And this is why, So
how good did the Jeff Saturday experiment work in Indianapolis? A guy who had basically the same type of coaching experience that Messier did, which is none. It was a disaster. So
I'm not saying it's a good idea.
That I put out there for the Rangers, and I have no inside sources. It's just that this were my team. This is who I would look at. John Gruden is a really good assistant with Boston. Jay Leach is a really good assistant with the Kraken. He's had some head coaching experience too. And then there's other good assistants out there, assistant material, like Brian Giantis with Niagara University. That's somebody where, hey, Drury has a history with. That might work out. And then Brad Larson, who really doesn't have a job right now, and kind of, I think, would work his way as an assistant to try and get another head coaching job down the road. I think you'd have a pretty good brain trust there.
Yeah.
A recycled coach is going to be good here.
And the name that I mentioned on off the post was Spencer Carberry, who's the Leafs assistant, who's really high being mentioned for the Washington job, and he was a finalist.
Bring him in. Absolutely. I don't know much about him, but I would bring him in.
He's an excellent coach.
And I saw Kevin Weeks say Patrick Waugh. I couldn't tell you how much of a disaster that was in New York, having to answer to everything.
It was so much fun, though, Russ.
It would be fun, but it would be a disaster.
Now, let's.
Obviously, it would be awesome.
It would be Brian.
Don't rule out Halpern in Washington. Halpern in Washington.
Halpern, yeah.
Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, he's got history there.
Yeah.
He's been with the Lightning for a while. It seems like it's his turn to come out of the Lightning, situation. So.
And I think Lalonde's success in Detroit, it gives more to that Tampa tree. It gives it more credibility.
Here's a question, though. I know the answer to this because he's a coach at heart. But, man, he was such a hit as an analyst. He could have he's still a relatively young man. He could have a long career in the media making television money. And coaching money is good, too. So I'm not saying that. But you're less likely to get fired.
Let's just say this, Kev. His stature as a commentator is elevated more by the guy who followed him, which was Dallas Eakins, who has not been good on Hockey Night in Canada, in my personal opinion. But okay, I wanted to touch on Edmonton Vegas before we do the lottery thing, because first of all, can you remember anybody who has dominated offensively as much as Draisaitl? I mean, I'm going back to Forsberg or Bossy back in the 80s, or he's got 12 goals already.
I know
it's absolutely insane.
Yeah, you got to go back to Lemieux or Gretzky.
Yeah.
I mean that, and and it's such a different era. This is on par with Lemieux and Gretzky because this is the defense is different, the approach is different. Yeah, I mean this is really, really impressive what he's doing. So,
but it's gotten to the point in this series where, and Jack Eichel took 2 or 3 minors in this game. You take a penalty against Edmonton, just put the goal up.
Here's a guy that I was thinking in my head had done something similar. So in 69-70, Esposito had 13 goals, 27 points.
Yeah,
that's pretty dominant.
I think Forsberg one year had over 20 goals in the play. I'm pretty sure one of the years with Colorado he had 20 goals. It was something like that. I mean, he's on pace for that. I mean,
he's only what 4 games into the second round.
I know.
Well, yeah, I mean, and Espo was productive, but not nearly as spectacular. There's no style, no style points for Espo.
That's fair.
Now, that was on the positive side for Edmonton. On the negative side, I have to say, Evander Kane is reinforcing his reputation as a punk, because the stuff that he did, especially when he had, I don't remember what Vegas player, I thought it was Colasar. He had him prone on the ice, and he's pumping punches into him, and the referees are standing around and doing absolutely nothing. I mean,
writing it down. They were writing it down.
Right. That's wonderful.
That was to me. That was. I mean, I did laugh as I saw him writing on his notebook. Like, what are you writing? Like,
right.
You know, it's pretty easy to remember.
I was getting the snot out of
my, you know.
Like that. The thing is, it got to the point of being dangerous because the guy was defenseless, and you have a ref there looking at him, and nothing's happening. Like that's something where the ref needs to get spoken to and maybe even suspended for a game for that, honestly, because you can't let that happen like that.
Yeah.
That game got out of control for a little bit, and you know, I mean, maybe for Vegas, maybe that's the motivation, because I mean, I really that they were taken out of that game early because Edmonton got so many goals and so many opportunities. And I wouldn't be surprised if they go away from Brossois to some other.
Sounds like they're not going to.
I know it's strange how Cassidy is just married to Laurent Brossois. It's weird, but okay.
It is.
He's actually I think he's played well.
No, he's played okay. I mean,
he's played okay, but I just don't.
I mean, he just doesn't have the pedigree.
Yeah,
he doesn't have options because Thompson's clearly not healthy, and Quick wasn't good, and so like, what are his real options?
Yeah, 17 goals for Bossy in 81. I think that was the year that they played Minnesota in the Cup final. So.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to do the Tankathon one last time before we?
I asked my readers today who they thought the hockey gods will make the recipient of Connor Bedard.
Well,
who did they think?
It's interesting. I haven't really read many of the comments yet, but it was
Chicago Blackhawks win the lottery.
Okay, that happened earlier today on XM.
I think the NHL would be happy if that happened.
Actually, listen, I mean, at least really bad teams are rewarded in that top three.
That's true.
Now, the funny thing is it's of course random. We ran this a couple days ago, and I think it was Buffalo and one other team elevated 10 spots. And this one, everything pretty much stayed the same. So
Philly stayed the same. Yep. San Jose in fourth, I think they would accept that, and that would really help them, actually. It would.
Well, who do you guys think the hockey gods are going to give it to? Kevin, who do you think?
Go ahead.
I was thinking Columbus.
Columbus?
Yeah.
Okay. As typical of me, and you know this because you've known me, so there are teams that I'm rooting do not get him. Because that's
not the question. The question is,
we don't care, Mike. Just tell us
wait a second. I care, so I'm going to say it. No, I mean, like, you know, look. Okay, I think the NHL wants Chicago. I think Anaheim with Zeke.
What does Mike want? Answer the goddamn question.
It's the hockey gods. Who are the hockey? Dig deep into all of your years of knowledge and close your eyes and picture who's going to be who Bill Daly's going to turn over tonight.
I would like to see the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Fine, great.
But more than that, I want that Arizona and Montreal don't get them.
There's no way that hockey gods will give it.
I see the hockey gods rewarding Anaheim. Anaheim's had it tough, and they have some good players, and they could be really exciting if they got him too. So
it would be good. I think it would be good.
And they get to choose a coach. They're going to get to choose a coach that maybe matches the players to them, and that would be good too.
It would be a good place for him to go. I have a weird feeling about San Jose.
Okay.
And but I've said it all along. It's going to be Montreal.
Be happy.
Montreal. It's going to be Montreal. Montreal is where the
it's not. Stop saying that.
It's been long enough that the Canadiens haven't been
good.
That
prediction is about as accurate as the Leafs winning in the second round.
Yeah, Montreal's not happening.
We'll see. I think it'll be Montreal. If they think about how things work and how the hockey gods work, it's time.
That's your first overall pick. What else do you want?
Go ahead, Kev.
Well, I was just going to say, the one thing that always happens at the end of this is all the conspiracy nuts.
Yeah.
The frozen ping pong ball.
I agree with Kevin. The minute this pick is made, there is going to be some sort of outrage, sort of pictures and report on it. And
I know they're going to
weighted balls. Yeah.
When did they do it? Did they do it like
the most benign team out there would be San Jose. and there's still going to be outrage, and there's still going to be some sort of report on it.
I know what Connor Bedard would want, because I think he's actually said it. He's been a lifelong Canucks fan. So if they had the 3% chance of winning the lottery, and we'd know about that right away, because if all of a sudden they're not picking 11th and they're one of the couple teams that won it, then all of a sudden he's going to get excited. It would be like, remember the look on Connor McDavid's face when it was Edmonton? It was like, it was stone faced.
Forget that. It's hard to imagine now, but people do forget that. Yep.
So,
all right. Well, it'll be fun. 8:00 tonight.
It's not going off at 8:00 though.
No, it's going to be like 8:45.
But aren't they going to try to get this in before the other game starts?
Yes,
it'll be 8:30. It's usually only a half-hour show.
Yeah, a half hour. Right. So the other game starts at 8:30. So I think that's why you'll see it. It'll be in that
8:25
half hour. Do you know when they do it, Kevin? Like the actual drawing of it? Do they do it?
It's usually earlier in the day, right?
Happening like now, probably. Right.
No, I was at the CBC building when they did the Matthews draw, and maybe they've changed it since then. I wasn't one of the reporters. There was one of the reporters went up, and he was like the one who viewed the process.
It
was
like, reporter, yeah,
right. It was like an hour before, so so probably around 7:00. So that's when they would do it, or that's when they did do it.
And then that reporter was what?
It was Jonas Siegel from the Athletic.
Went to the dungeon for an hour.
He went up there, but he could not have a phone. It was like, so he wouldn't let it out. But he was like the like you said, the pool reporter, Kev. He was there to watch and observe.
Right. Verify. Yeah.
Make sure it all goes off well.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
There's going to be so many happy people and unhappy people at the same time tonight. That's just what's happening.
Yeah.
As long as Corinne is unhappy, I'll be happy.
I wanted. Who do we think is going to be the most bored-looking GM? Like that's one of my favorite.
They don't. GMs don't come very often anymore now.
No, but they always have them in the pictures now. What they did last year, right? They had all 12 of them on.
No. They had you had head of amateur scouting and director of player development. We didn't have that many last year.
Anaheim will send Trevor Zegras, and he'll do the Michigan on somebody in the studio.
I'll say it's going to be Pierre Dorian because he can't win the top pick, and if he does win the top pick, he'll still have the second pick, but his fan base will kill him.
Right. That's funny.
No, the most bored looking will be Yzerman.
But the new Yzerman, I doubt will be there, and unless they demand that they show up. But I think it was Draper that year.
It was Draper last time.
Mostly they've shifted because GMs hate to go to those things. So.
Yeah.
Well, the most memorable thing was the look on Brian Burke's face when he was at in the Matthews one. It was just like stone face for and they had the camera on him for 25 seconds. That was not the best optic.
All right, folks. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Enjoy the game tonight, and then we'll be back again tomorrow.